Thank you for having me. It's always a privilege to participate. And I want to give the CD, the Center for Professional Development, a plug for everyone who doesn't know. They have some fabulous programs. So, besides the Otter Institute, there are some great training programs that you should, if not take yourself, feel free to tell everyone else at your institution as well. I'm happy to be back, and I just managed to have my coffee. I'm ready to go. The first thing I will mention is my office has a little spot Wi-Fi, so if I cut out for a second or so, please be patient, and I will be patient and try to answer any questions. Feel free to toss them in the chat. That's one of the things I'm happy to do. I don't like to be always set in a certain way. I'd rather have everyone walk away feeling like they learned something or at least shared something. All right, so I was asked to really talk about how we can create more dynamic delivery, or how we can have more dynamic presentations. And one of the things I'd just like to bring out and see if people will share is, why are synchronous courses dull, right? We don't want to believe that, but they really are. Students polled preferred to either have a traditional face-to-face class or an asynchronous online class instead of a synchronous remote learning. We went that way. Does anyone have any idea why? You didn't think I'd start with a question, did you?
I'm waiting on responses here, Dave.
Oh, great.
Lack of engagement came from Diane.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's something we should think about. Literally, our students think that the synchronous courses that they go to or have to take online are not exciting, and they prefer the other two delivery forms. And is it something, occasionally I have deans that mention that it seems to be something implicit with the delivery or the medium, and I'm not sure that's the case. So another thing about student perception, from a couple cases that were published using HighFlex, they found that when they had the students rank the effectiveness of the modes of delivery, many of them felt that they learned the best through the traditional, with only marginally less with asynchronous, and then it dropped with synchronous again. So it seems that every time of the three types of delivery, the synchronous always seems to just drop and the students aren't interested in it. And here we asked the ever famous French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre, and we have two questions I want to bring up. That was my bad pun. Okay, I tried for the famous Otter. Is our teaching engaging, right? And then we have to ask, is that really for online, or is it just for everything? Is it how we present the material? Is it really that stimulating, or is it not so stimulating? And then the other one is, are we using the medium correctly? Those are two things, and the two separate questions we need to sort of address, because we may be the most engaging dynamic person, but if we don't use the medium correctly and all you see is a blank or fuzzy screen and hear me, it's not going to be that engaging for the students. So those are two questions we sort of need to address, and that will help us determine how to have a more dynamic presentation or something that'll increase the student engagement. So I promise to always give people a little roadmap. So here we go. Hopefully in this next 30 minutes or so, we'll be discussing how you can be dynamic. And I will let you know that that could be applied both in your presentation style in your course, or on this little YouTube type of thing right now, or a Zoom room. Okay, so how can we be more dynamic in our presentation so that we can increase engagement through interest and through interactivity? Then I'll talk a little about the delivery. I'll have a little bit of fun of how we can abuse the technology, or at least if we know how to abuse it, we should then learn how to use it. And likewise, how we can foster strategies that will increase engagement. And again, I always like to promise people that there'll be at least one typo in here that you can find for the people who enjoy finding typos. And I promise that you'll find at least an Otter in this presentation. I occasionally go through slide decks quickly because I like to have some information available to people, but also have make it a little stimulating for you visually. If I had too much movement, though, it wouldn't work either. you are welcome to go to this. It's an online blog, and I actually have this posted, and actually I'll probably even embed this talk or session once it goes live on YouTube as well. You're welcome to go. Even right now, you can go through the slide deck. You can skip ahead and see the answers and answer them in the chat. Look smart. Doesn't matter, but it's always here and it's available, as well as any other notes that are I had in
Dave,
previous.
can
Yes.
I interrupt you for a second? Diane asked a good
course.
question here.
Yes.
When were students surveyed, pre-COVID or post-COVID?
That was during COVID. But with one of the HiFlex surveys, that was pre-COVID. And that was just, they were trying to figure out what works best for their delivery. And they found that often the students that don't show up in real time, they like to go to the class and feel connected. They would often say that, you know, they preferred it, but if they can't go, it's usually a timing problem and they couldn't make that hour anyway. So the asynchronous gave them the flexibility and they found that more effective. And many just didn't like watching an hour lecture either. So even when they recorded the synchronous, it didn't seem to have the same power as a well-made asynchronous version of the course. All right, any other questions on that as you're monitoring the chat?
Nope, I think you covered it. Thanks.
Okay, but yeah, I do have in the session on the blog too, you'll see a lot. I may have included that. I may not. I have a section on, I'm putting together a large report on several features about HiFlex as well. So you'll see a lot of references in there. Please use them. I feel if I had to pull up all this research, I try to share it with everyone. So share it with everyone you can. I'm going to start then with, is our teaching engaging? Right. And again, I mentioned it, I said it before, it could be online or could be in the classroom. This has very little to do sometimes with how the course is designed or even the medium in which we're utilizing. Instead, it's, if you're going to have a live session, are you doing something in your presentation or acting in a certain way or structuring it that doesn't make it exciting, right? And if that's not engaging, then regardless of the delivery technique or the technology behind it, it won't be that exciting, right? Now the sun comes out and starting to make me blind. All right, so I enjoyed the window for a little bit. I should have closed the window blinds. So I think we all know, and I'm usually preaching to the converted here, that the sage on the stage model, the one that if you're like me, that's what you went through grad school and went through undergraduate, where you sat there, they lectured at you at a huge lecture hall and you took notes and that's how you're supposed to learn. It was amazingly boring, right? And passive, right? I always encourage people to Google Father Guido Sarducci and you'll, look at the 5-minute university skit that'll basically sum it up 100% of how it doesn't really work, right? But when we did suddenly that rapid pivot, we had many faculty who would basically utilize Zoom or some other conference where it would be a 30 or 30-minute or a half an hour or even longer session where they're just talking away. And if you think about it, that's equally as dull, right? It's not so exciting if you have to sit there intensely looking at someone as they're talking without feeling, any sense of connection. So really, I'm just going to say that long lectures are really not effective, whether or not they're online, in a classroom, they just are not that exciting, right? So the first thing we need to think about is then how can we be dynamic, right? So that we can engage an audience verbally and non-verbally. And it's even harder right now because, well, you don't even see the audience. I don't really have many visual clues. I can possibly look at the corner and see if there's anyone who has their camera on, and I usually see some happy faces, but then I realize, no, it's my stigmatism and it's just a picture of somebody. So we need to sort of move on. But the thing I like to point out is, and I don't know if anyone knows who this is. Does anyone know who this is? Anyone guess that Steve Jobs?
Yep, we had some guesses there.
Okay. So he is phenomenal at presenting material. So if everyone wants, you want to think about how I could be a better presenter, feel free to go and look up some of the videos and presentations done by Steve Jobs. A lot of times he would stand there. He's lit, dark room, and there's a slide with one word on it and maybe a little left. And that's, he talks about it because it's that simplicity. It's not necessarily all the information that's behind him that matters. What matters is the message that he is going to give. So it's not what's on the slides, but it's what's between the words and how he brings it to you. So that's something you should think about. It's not necessarily what you're bringing, here's the text, but it's how you're presenting the text and how you can sort of do it in an interesting way. And when you're presenting, you really want to give the big picture. You don't necessarily want to sit and read a paper. I find it interesting that several of my colleagues who have degrees in the science, work in the sciences, they know this. They go to a conference and they would never read a paper and talk about, p-values. No, they're going to present, this is what it is. You can go read the paper when you want, right? But ironically, some of the humanities, and I would think that, here you have artists and all the humanities, they don't. They'll sometimes read. And when you read, you often speak in monotone. And then everyone in the audience wants to go to sleep. And they often wonder, why? Why am I doing this, right? I could be somewhere else and read the paper much faster. So it's something to sort of think about, that when we're presenting, it's not going to be as technical as a paper, but we want to cover the big story, and you want to excite the people so that they want to go read the paper. And that's the same thing with the students. You want to sort of excite them about the material, so now they want to go back and look into it more, or maybe even just Google it and find other resources in the library. All right. So this, I think, is the important thing that's going to help you. And it always happens within the first 3 to 5 minutes of any presentation that's going to be successful, right? These are 3 tips. Now, there could be, I'm saying this is a heuristic, there might be one that isn't, but really try to capture the audience's attention. Start with a bold statement, like, your lectures are boring, right? Make people think, no, they aren't. Yes, you've already got them, right? You've hooked them in. And if you think about it, movies do this all the time, right? There's some big thing that happens and then they reel you in, right? That's a very common way of sort of getting your attention, because there's so many things competing for your attention that statement can bring you in. Optionally, stories. You start with a story about what brought you to this or so. Little do you know, you have an irrational way of being influenced by anecdotes. So your little story is going to be a lot more meaningful than when people often say, look at this chart of 40,000 people, and we can tell you that statistically, it doesn't really mean things. Is that good? Well, I was a person who taught logic. I get very frustrated, but it works. So use that to your advantage when you're a presenter. People want to know those stories. So it sort of helps. If you are not good with telling stories or giving some people little anecdotes, you can skip it. It's optional, but it works, right? And also show people what they'll learn. Front load the lecture. You don't have to hide. You're going to cover X, Y, and Z. In fact, if you notice, I already did that. It's coming up and it's not going to be a shock. Okay, so, well, hopefully it'll be interesting at least, but you at least know what's coming, right? And you should also consider beginning with an interactive aspect. There are a lot of tools out there right now. If you go to the learning blog that I had, there's actually posts that give you free tools that you can utilize, or tell you about web tools that you can get your students to be more engaged in your class, such as polling. These things work really well, and they feel, they feel like they're sort of part of the process. Just like right now, I happen to have this great person who's helping me by monitoring the chat and telling me that there's some really great conversation going on in there, because there's 19 chat messages that I see. And here's a couple other tips. All right, so hopefully this will stir a couple people who remember. Does anyone know who this is? Hoping to raise that up to maybe 20, right? When Jim Henson made the Muppets and the Muppet Show, there were little Muppets, big people. If you look at the way Muppets move, they wave around their arms and move about so that you can see them. When you're teaching in Zoom land right now you're seeing a slide deck and you're seeing a little picture of me, right? In order for this to work, and you actually feel that I am not a simple automaton moving like this, I need to move a little more animated than I would normally. Although if you knew me, you'd know that I bounce around the room a lot because I usually have like an espresso before I do any one of these things. It's my liquid courage. But you want to actually utilize some sort of movement, right? So, Jamie, is there anything in the chat that I should catch? Or did they guess
A lot
speaker?
of beakers.
Okay, okay. So what can I say? This slide, you should also embrace your humor. Naturally, I put Beaker in here. Every time I see this slide now, I keep thinking of him singing with Diana Ross, where she sings upside down, and I can hear him going, me, me, me. But, you know, it's, you know, I find very few people are offended by Muppets, although it does show that we're very harsh to the cruel treatment of puppets, because when in doubt, they always tossed penguins in the air and had explosions. Maybe that wouldn't pass the muster today. But you can embrace your humor. You might realize that my humor is a little quirky, as long as you're not offensive to anyone or so within the confines of the forum. It's all right. We've talked about this. We had a great talk before. Embrace your nerdiness, right? I mean, it takes a very strange person to really get excited about pedagogy and instructional design. But I've been fascinated with human cognition as well as human learning for over 30 years. So I'm going to have some quirks. But if you do that, the students are going to recognize that you're a person, and they're going to realize you might be quirky, but maybe that's worth listening to, right? So, and also show your excitement, as I mentioned before, right? You really got to do this. I mean, I'm presuming no one's just teaching for the money, because I kind of know how much everyone gets paid, right? This is not the reason you go into teaching, right? Instead, you do it because you find this interesting. You find your topic interesting. So show them why you're excited and why they should care, right? Why are they learning this material and what does it for them, right? And that brings us to the next thing, show the relevance, right? If you mention, I'm going to teach you something, and they don't see the point in learning, for example, informal fallacies, then who cares? Now, if I show them, I'm going to teach you informal fallacies that you can use it for convincing people to pay you more, they might realize, oh, I mean, I don't have to be good. I can use it against my boss and they can consider that I need more money. Sure, as long as you don't hurt people, I'm okay with that, right? They'll at least learn it, right? Show them the relevancy, or at least they won't be duped by, you know, silly arguments. But this is true of everything, right? The relevancy of knowing geology when buying a house is going to be really important to know about water tables. So pay attention to it. And of course, you're going to say, but I'm shy. There's always going to be someone out there, right? This is academia. And many times if you're like me, one of the things I loved about being an academic is I could hide in the library and do a lot of research by myself. And I just don't have to work without people at all, right? However, part of the job, and if we really want to reach people and have them learn, is to sort of get over that. And it's very difficult when you're an introvert, but there are ways. Most of us face these same problems. I don't have any numbers, but I would not be surprised if at least 60% of faculty are actually introverted in one way or another. So we should just accept that. Here's another chat question. I always like to quiz people on things that are safe. Does anyone know who this is? And while you're trying to answer that, I'll give you a clue. She played Nurse Dixie on Emergency One, which of course now makes you wonder, how old is this guy talking, right? Actors, police officers, teachers, they all don a persona when they start to do their job. A police officer, when he's gonna give someone a ticket, they're not gonna be walking over there and like, yeah, I'm jamming out to what I was listening. No, they put on their game face. They're like, you know how fast you're going, right? They're not like that at home, but instead, they have to act a very serious thing because they're taking the role of the law enforcement officer, right? Actors take the role of something else, right? When you're a teacher, you probably don't even realize it. When you start teaching, you literally put on this sort of game face and you literally go into teacher mode. I see it all the time. My wife is an academic and I ask her some sort of question in her specialty. And when she's normally like this and boom, right? It's almost like change of lighting and she starts going into teacher mode, right? It happens, right? So Jamie, did anyone guess who this is?
We had two different guesses, Julie London or Rita Hayworth.
No, it's not Rita Hayworth, it's Julie London. She actually played also Jane from Tarzan and Jane. And she was a very sultry singer, did some, what do they call that, smoldering jazz. She was also terminally shy. She was very, very shy. And in fact, when it came to her entire musical recording career, most of the time she was too shy to be with the other musicians in the room to listen to her sing. So they actually brought recording equipment to her house where she could do it in private. So if you feel shy about talking to your students, although you can sort of revel in knowing that they're at a distance here, right? They're more than an arm's length. You should know that you're not alone, right? We all are. But what we do to get past that when we're in the teaching mode is that we literally put on that mask and we do that. So you sort of have to give yourself a couple minutes beforehand and sort of take on that persona. And then it's not so bad because they're not really seeing who you are. It's that persona. So you're okay, right? Moving on then, something that I should probably do more is practice your presentation, right? Even if it's going to be for undergraduates, you want to make sure that you keep it on time, even if it means you have to have like a clock going in the background, something, keep it rolling, right? And also look over your presentation and look for key areas to emphasize, right? Those are important to sort of find those key things, draw attention to them, and you can only do that through practice. And once again, liquid courage. I use caffeine. I mean, maybe you need decaffeinated coffee. Maybe you need to meditate beforehand. Some people take an aspirin before anything stressful, depending on how it is. Don't take my advice. Take it from an actual medical doctor. So check your medical doctor first. Whatever it takes, that's sort of thing that you need to prep yourself for, and you'll be fine, right? So everything I have talked about so far has directly been effective both in a synchronous environment and face-to-face. So take every one of those things, and if you have to go to a conference, I long for the days of actually going to a conference where I'd actually meet people afterwards. And I had some really crazy stories. You'd think these, very tame academics were tame, and no, they weren't, but at least you got to know them and you got to create these sort of connections that are kind of difficult when we're all at a distance. But you can still use those. Maybe we'll go back to those once in a while so actually see people. Or if you're truly, like some people I know, they're okay with never going back, but you can still do them in a face-to-face setting as well. Now I'd like to talk about the delivery, and some of this will apply to face-to-face, but it really hammers home when you're talking about a synchronous presentation. So we really need to think that, are we really using or are we abusing the technology? And these are things I think are really critical to think about, because a lot of times people don't realize they're using their screwdriver as a hammer or a pry, and then they wonder why it's not working as well. And it definitely doesn't work well as a screwdriver. So we need to sort of think about how we're utilizing that. So first thing I need to do, and I'm going to do it right now, is you need to take some regular breaks, right? I'm just going to ask Jamie again, anything in the chat right now that I should pay attention to?
I think the last comment had to do with emergency, the show.
Okay, so no real emergency then. Okay.
Right, but I think that Pam had a comment in reference to a question I missed by Adele, perhaps, where she was referencing that survey you were talking about. When were the students surveyed? During COVID, during the first pivot, et cetera. So she was like, when during COVID? During the first pivot?
That I'd have to check the reference on.
Okay.
I'd have to just look in the reference. It was something I don't have that knowledge right offhand, but I know it was during COVID because it was brand new and it was sometime during COVID. I remember reading it while at my desk at home. So I know I was still working from home. So I know that is a fact, but I can look into that and, hold me to it. I will, even if you contact me through email at wolfdf@suny.scccc.edu, I will gladly email you some of the resources. I also have them on the blog. So again, knowledge is for sharing.
And then Pam also mentioned, I think this testifies to student vote. In our College of Medicine, the first year students show up the first month for lectures. Then that drops off from 170 students to about 20 in the classroom.
Yes.
The rest are viewing the recorded lectures online. They say they don't need to be in the room to hear the lecture.
And again, they're missing that interactive aspect that could happen. But, you know, if they have to go to a room where there's 100 people all sitting there taking notes from what the person's saying, that could be done more efficiently, right? So it really doesn't do us any favors. One thing you won't see, you won't hear, is in law school where they take the first year students and they're using the Socratic method to teach the whole class. You got to be there, because at any given time you could be called on and ask the next question that brings the next topic, right? So that's if you're not familiar with the Socratic method, please look into it. It's really, it takes a lot for an instructor, because you have to plan and you have to know the students' names and all, and you have to be able to switch in a dime, but it's very effective. So, and the other important thing about taking these breaks and asking is you're also making sure that the technology works, right? I want to make sure that I'm still talking not just to myself at a blank screen. That's humiliating, right? You want to make sure that everyone's getting this. So, you know, if you want me to repeat something or have questions, feel free to bring that up. I will gladly stop. And this just goes right back to some of the technology that really matters is try to use the best standards, right? Think of the best practices. Try to have good lighting. I've been forced to come to this office that has absolutely dreadful lighting. I tried to open up to get some natural lighting, and I have a choice right now of you know, blaring too much or not enough, but I'm trying to turn just the right way to get the good lighting, right? So try to keep eye contact with your camera. I know that's difficult. You want to look at yourself in the corner, right? But if you're looking at the camera, then it looks like I'm looking at you. So that's something to think about. And good audio. Right now I'm using a Bluetooth that's cutting out fan and a lot of other noise that's in the background. You really want to invest in, you know, could be a cheap set of Bluetooth speakers or something along that lines that you can wear as a headset. It'll give you some mobility. I see, I don't have to worry about being caught by the cord. Just remember to charge it beforehand. I can speak that. I'm personally guilty of that. And this is something I'd like to bring up that I find the most disturbing, and that is that power corrupts and PowerPoint corrupts completely. All right. I'm using PowerPoint really to demonstrate how much it can corrupt. All right. So I just want you to know that. All right. Remember, one message, one slide. Okay. Keep people focused on that. Right. And of course, this is, you know, one slide or another, right? The other slide. Do not attack people with bullets, right? Think of cognitive load theory. We had a fabulous session that talked about this, right? It was that you should have no more than maybe 7. More recent research has suggested basically 4 to 5. Many professional speakers say no more than 5. If you flash up 5 bullets and take it away, people remember at least 3 to 4 of those. But if you have more than 5, they'll never remember those while you're talking, or they'll have to spend so long and taking photos of it that they miss the whole big picture. So make it a point to, you know, don't use bullets on your class, right? In fact, the joke is bullet points have that name because people are so frustrated with how many they start shooting at you. So don't use bullets. All right. And of course, what can I say about this? That some people read every word on the slide. The slide allows them to easily create a speech that they do not have to prepare for. In fact, teaching classes is easy with publisher content. You can simply read the slide without any preparation. The audience often wonders why don't they read your paper and use the time for anything else? Students often feel cheated when their tuition pays someone to read a prepared publisher slide. At conferences, most people cannot help but find this behavior annoying. So don't do that. All right. If you found that really annoying, imagine what students feel. It doesn't work. So as a point, what you want to make sure is don't read the slide. That's a cheater's way of not being prepared or knowing your material, right? So many adjuncts say, this is awesome. I get my own slide decks and all from the publisher, and I just there and I read the slides. The students know they're being cheated, and you know you're being cheated. You're here to listen to me explain what's going on and give you the big picture. You can always read the papers. You can go to my blog right now, look at maybe the 20 different resources, copy them down, download them from the library, have them print them out. By the way, if you haven't printed out, you read them faster than if they're online. And that's just research that shows that you don't need to listen to me read it to you. You could read it faster. So just don't do it. Instead, come up with ideas where you have one keyword and just go around that keyword, or an image where you brand that image, right? There's research that'll demonstrate that they're going to learn it faster. They're going to have better retention rates if you do that, right? Oh, this is one of my favorites. Sometimes I spend hours putting together really dumb ideas. So here's a few odder things that you should know for your presentation using PowerPoint, okay? In general, do not over animate or use motion. It's just doesn't do anything unless that motion is directly relevant to what you need to do for your presentation. There's no need for it. You can just get rid of it. And don't use bad contrast either. You need to have very good contrast. It just makes us sometimes uneasy, makes people squint. It's not accessible. If you choose the really bad combinations, it can make you nauseous. So just don't do that. And the other rule is size matters. The larger the item should be, the larger the importance. So if you want them to focus on something, it's something humans do. They're going to focus on the large item on the slide. So make them focus on that. And probably because of the slide, you're focusing on the otter, right? And now that I've beat up on PowerPoint, that's just a few of the items. I'm just going to point one more thing. PowerPoint, and I'm just going to quote David Byrne here on this. So I guess I'm going to stop making sense. It should not substitute our talks. It should supplement them. So you should be thinking about, how can I make my talk more interesting? If you were just to look at my head the whole time, this would be very dull. And that's why I like to use a set of slides. It sort of gets you more engaged visually and brings out those keywords. So you should be using PowerPoint that way. So does anyone have any questions on some of those things about PowerPoint? I did miss a few of them, but we had a great session on PowerPoint already. So, we don't need to have any more, but really, don't overuse that, the animations or anything like that. Just think of the keywords. Jamie, is there anything in the chat session?
I think that's, you've got it.
I got it.
There were a couple comments about your great line on the bullets. We use the 5x5 rule. That's from Pam. And then a couple of comments about how punny you are. And then someone's asked for the link to your blog or website in the chat. And I'm going to try to find that and put that in the chat.
Okay, thank you very much.
Laura asks, what would you recommend instead of a PowerPoint?
See, I'm actually using PowerPoint, so it's sort of ironic that I'm saying that. One thing about PowerPoint, and I have to give it to Microsoft, they realized that some of the products they were riding on, like Office, can now be ubiquitous everywhere. There's, Open Office and other features, Libra and things that are free. So they really hammered home to make an accessible product, provided you use the accessibility checkers. So in that sense, PowerPoint can be very useful. But if you're going to be utilizing it in a video area or so, there are alternatives that you can use. I have used Prezi for some presentations because it's non-linear, and it's sort of fun to be able to just have 4 categories right up in the back of you and ask which one does one want to talk about, and be able to then click on it and go immediately, right? That creates a sense of engagement that is kind of hard to quickly slide through or find the slide deck and jump around in PowerPoint. So that works. But if they're going to rely on Prezi's had some accessibility issues. So you have to think of the pros versus the cons. So that would be one of them. There are other really interesting presentation tools, Keynote. Sometimes anything that's just a little different makes people interested, right? Because they say, I've not seen that before. Or for example, open broadcasting, right? OBS. people were digging it up. How is he doing that with a green screen or something, right? That in itself got you engaged, and you're just holding on, trying to see what he's doing, right? So sometimes don't be afraid to try out a new technology and then work it to see how you can use it the best. But always make sure that you have some sort of accessible option, right? So that, okay, they didn't catch this, but you can say, you can catch my notes. Here's the link, and have a link to a PDF that's, annotated for what, they need to learn, so that they can choose a different modality in case this one didn't work for them. I'm a big fan of offering the content in multiple modalities, by the way. So if your college, for example, doesn't utilize Blackboard Ally, you can consider it. You can download content and change the language. You can download it and get it as an audio file so that you can listen to it on your phone while you're riding your bus into the college. There's many things that you can do that affects everyone. So,
Hey, Dave, we have a question
yes,
here from
sure.
Stephen. In terms of visual engagement, another session this week introduced a video app that allowed the presenter to be in front of the slides like a meteorologist on the local news. What are your thoughts on that?
OBS. That's just what I referred to.
Yeah.
Some people like it. Some people really like the green screen. I actually thought about, when I first came to this college, of utilizing the green screen technique. I actually use green screening in different videos that I make. People wonder how I create, these short videos with my hand moving, but drawing and not. And the answer is, yeah, you can use a green screen effect very effectively, but it's not for everyone. So if you're like me, I kind of feel that people don't really want to see me. I am moving my hands around a lot and all, but I really want people to focus more on the image, and that might work. But if you're willing to explore it, I think it's worth giving it a try. I believe OBS is open too, so you might need to invest a little in the hardware. But if you have a good computer, maybe 2 screens and a nice mic, you'll be set to go. And you'll generally find that having 2 screens will increase your productivity anyway, and having good hardware is going to make any type of work easy. So I'm not going to dissuade you from it if you're interested, but I'm not going to recommend that people do it if they're hesitant, right? There are actually ways that you can even make yourself an avatar, right? You have the talking avatar, but I'm not too thrilled with that either. I like people to know that I'm a real person and I'm here. Any other questions? We're up to 45 already. Wow, if I don't check my chat, I can actually monitor how well I'm doing.
We were just commenting on how many monitors people have. Nothing really a question for you,
Okay,
I think.
okay. Well, I got 3 in this room right now because I'm not using mine. I'm actually using my my laptop, so it doesn't give me the access to a million screens, but the hardware is much better and faster. So I figured you would appreciate that in my presentation. So here we're just going to talk about engagement, right? And I do this a lot because I think often we're not utilizing the medium correctly. And I've been saying that for 15 years now that I've been doing mostly online instruction. We do not realize how to utilize the medium. And we try to use our preconceived notions of how we teach outside of the medium and push them into the medium. And then we wonder why it's not successful. And in many ways, I think this is probably why synchronous sessions don't do as well. So here's a quick little feature. I'm hoping that I can pull this off and it works, because I almost never use video. So this is Busby Berkeley. And if you don't, we'll just kill that. There we go. The point of what you just saw with Busby Berkeley's film here is that before, all musicals were filmed like they were a vaudeville or stage performance. And I'm going to refer you to seeing Roberta with Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. In fact, Fred Astaire is a phenomenal dancer and choreographer, and every one of his scenes now in all of his films, go watch them. It was never a break. It was never multiple cameras. There's like one camera and might move, but the whole session is one whole dance, which is truly impressive. But here you'll see in Roberta, it's literally, they have a camera down and you see them dance, right? But Busby Berkeley realized, we have a camera. We have multiple cameras in editing. We can put cameras where people could never be when they're at the movie theater, or where they're at a play, or when they're on the street watching someone perform. We can be underneath them. We can be on top looking at huge displays. We can see things in ways that never could be seen before. And that's how he pushed the envelope for what a musical performance is, right? He realized that this was a new technology and we need to explore the best ways of using that technology. Now, let's take that lesson to online learning. It's only 20 years at best that we've really been doing this. And a lot of people who are moving into it have not been doing it that long. So they're not exploring the best possible way that we can utilize the technology, right? So first, we know that just like in any movie, they'll tell any writer, good scripts don't say things, they show it, right? Same thing here. If you're going to have slide decks, don't tell people what they are going to be, show it. Utilize graphs, images, charts, something that's visual, because they're going to listen to you anyway, right? And they can always read the material elsewhere. Utilize the medium for what it's best for. Here's a chart to remind you that when it came to watching educational video, whether it's 6 minutes or 36 minutes, people are going to watch the video for 6 minutes. That's the medium. Okay. And that's true no matter what. People just don't have that attention span unless it stops or starts or does something else. So know that going in, that if you do a long lecture, you're going to lose them after 6 minutes. You need to break it up and do other things, or at least have silence, something, change the topic to get people going. And that's where I bring up the idea of creating little micro lessons, right? If you have to do an hour or 30 minutes, can you break it up into 10 little sections, or 6 little sections that are only 10 minutes with give or take? Because if you do that, you're going to give people that time to digest the material and then go, oh yeah. And then if they discuss it a little bit and they go to the next session, they're going to be able to go to that next session a little more fresh cognitively, right? And that's where we also have to remember that the web is definitely a different medium. It's really meant to be dynamic. It's not meant to be just a one-way transmission. TV, yeah, maybe that's a one-way transition, but not the web. That's why social media is so powerful. People feel that they can interact with it, right? In fact, if you use multiple forms of medium and you put them together, people will more likely to remember, and it communicates it better. Again, you got to click on that link to get some neat tools, right? Might take time for people to respond. Silence isn't a bad thing. I'm hoping at some point, I was thinking about waiting 5 more minutes to see if anyone noticed, right? But you can be quiet. You can ask a question and give people time to seriously think, right? And it might not be their thinking. They might be struggling to type it in or something, right? And they have bad bandwidth, right? And in that sense, you want to be flexible and forgiving. If you are, they will be. So when you have bad technical problems, they'll understand. Laugh it off and keep going, right? And I promise I'm almost over. So you can ask as many questions as you want for adopting these strategies. But one of the best strategies I found for teaching both in the classroom and in a synchronous session is to utilize the flipped classroom, right? Have the students have to do the material first. They have to read the content, and then they come and they're going to do something in that session that's synchronous. That way, you as an instructor can focus your energy on diagnosing what they may have wrong or what they know and where they need to be pointed to. If you don't, they're just going to listen. Okay, they can always watch the recording later, and then they realize they forgot to watch the recording, right? That's not a good idea. Instead, have them have to do something after the first 5 minutes of the class, and then have them present on what that was. And that's going to demonstrate that they did the material. And they're going to need to know that. So if you have these smaller breakout groups and reporting back and doing little sessions and breaking things up into little micro lessons, you're going to find that you're going to have a higher engagement factor in your class. At first, students not going to like it, but you know what? And then they're going to realize this is work, but they're learning, and that's not a bad thing. So here's some of the things that people have complained to me about when they try to flip their classes. In particular, I like to point out that there are issues about the lack of participation that happens in flipped classes. Students just don't really want to participate, as well as students don't really do the work beforehand. That's often a matter of design. You can design your course so that you will encourage them to do otherwise. Okay? How? I would not say it without giving you some answers, right? Low stake grading incentivizes the keeping up with the material. If you basically, allow them to, they have to do X, Y, and Z for the material. When they do, you can even track what they do online. Believe it or not, there are lots of tools in like Blackboard 9.1 even. We're talking old school LMSs. Most people have upgraded to that, where you can track what they did, and when they do, you can give them a click, and provided they manage to get that content done and answer 2 questions demonstrating they did that content, they'll get 2 points. It's not a big thing, but it's enough to encourage them to do it, because they realize if they keep doing that, that's going to be a whole grade by the end of the semester. They're going to keep on top of that, and they're going to also do discussions the same way. Low stakes, right? Just little things that mean something for their grading that's going to encourage them. All right. And in many ways, that's going to help also stop the free riding that happens. I love this picture. If you look carefully, you'll see that one otter is taking the other one for a ride, right? You want to stop that. You don't want the one student doing all the work in that little group, right? And one way of doing that is peer review. Let everyone mention, this guy showed up but didn't do squat. There's one thing about being quiet but producing, but there's another about just being absent, right? And in many ways, we can also look to universal design for learning, about how students need assignments and need courses to be structured to promote their own self-regulation skills, right? We need to build up certain scaffolds to help them know when they need to get stuff done so that they can get them done on time. That's going to improve, all right? And again, that low stake incentive, just give them that incentive, they'll be fine. Now, I'm sorry it took so long about that. Are there any questions on that? Or any questions for me?
Not so far, but if anybody has any, please feel free to put them in the chat. I was mentioning in response to your breakout room slide that in the June series in Otter, we would see anywhere between 20 to 30% of our audience would actually log out whenever a breakout room was kind of brought into play in these presentations. So it's not just our students, right? It's ourselves that are resistant to those breakout rooms sometimes.
Yes. In fact, we should always look to ourselves and realize our students are just like us, right? 1 in 3 students in the United States right now, college students, have children. So it's not like what it was years ago. They have a lot of responsibilities, and they have the same type of life pressing on them that we do. So we should look to ourselves. If we're uncomfortable with breakout rooms, if we're uncomfortable with some aspect, chances are there's a lot of our students feel the same way.
Stephen indicates it also reveals who is engaged when you have people lagging in the main room instead of moving to the breakouts. Very true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So,
Chris says students have so much more going on now than ever.
Yeah. I mean, we all do. I mean, I hate to say it, we're all sort of suffering from trauma of this pandemic in many ways, right? We're all locked up. Our whole world has been switched around. And now we're even fearing that we're going to have another lockdown. And that's facing every one of the students. They might lose their jobs again. They might not know what, to expect. And then, of course, there's, this whole distance thing.
And Chris also says it could also be an indicator that their technology is not quite compatible.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah. If you have bad bandwidth, it is exceptionally difficult to have, for example, your camera on, right? So we need to think about those things. And it's not just having bad bandwidth. You don't realize the situation people are in. I happen to have a very modest house and a spouse who happens to have another educational job, and we're both very active. So it was very difficult sometimes where we will have concurrent meetings going on, and the only place that we could work is our one little office area. So we had dueling computers, and we're like holding up little signs underneath the view of the camera saying, I need to speak now, so that the other one person would mute, and then I wanted to quickly do, and you'd notice would always quick whenever we speak and quickly mute off. And we would just say, oh, we're doing that, because we don't want the background sounds, which is really the background sounds of the spouse doing another meeting and concurrently. So I'm sure that was happening with lots of students. The children may be taking classes, or their spouse may be doing work at a distance all at the same time in an area that they probably don't want you to see. Or they could be like one faculty member I knew who had to escape to her car in order to get good internet.
We have a couple more comments here.
Wow.
Sorry, I have to roll up. There were quite a few.
Okay, I see the nut, and whatever I said, I'm just noticing, boom. But that's also sometimes giving people time.
Alexis says, I'm guilty of leaving when breakout rooms are used. It depends a lot on why I'm at the session and what I personally want to get out of it. Many professional webinars like this one, I'm multitasking with a more mechanical task at the same time. It's either multitask or not attend. So breakouts don't work well in that case.
Yeah.
And then
I feel you, Alexis. I have multiple phones that ring. Unfortunately, faculty member have my cell phone number and call me a lot on that too. So I'm always like texting, faxing, and I'm always afraid of those too. And people see someone come in for emergency. So I understand you have a lot of responsibilities, and sometimes you can't be there for that. Yeah.
So there's a comment from Stephen, and then I'm gonna skip there, and then because Tim has two comments that are related to one another. So Stephen says breakouts are the 21st century version of the dreaded in-class group work for sure. So Tim says, I fear that even as we have all learned to prefer doing everything online during the pandemic, we will lose a lot of the old ways that we might still want. For example, I like stores, but I keep using Amazon, even though I hate myself for it. I prefer online church to getting dressed and going to church, but what is that going to mean for us in higher education? There are a lot of cool things about online classes, but will we ever get the toothpaste back in the tube? And what will that mean for us?
I have not heard that expression in a while. The toothpaste. I usually say the genie back in the bottle, but same idiom, right? I think things are just going to change no matter what. I think we're learning that our students are facing serious issues, especially the need for time. I wish that our country would learn that maybe it's a way that we could have used this pandemic as a way of understanding that we need to restructure, and what we were doing before wasn't actually working, right? I mean, it takes one pandemic and millions of people lost healthcare because they lost their jobs and they're all floundering. That was not good. I'm thinking we'll probably never be able to get the toothpaste back, but it doesn't mean that those skills have to be lost. It just means that we pocket those skills. I pride myself in knowing a lot of archaic skills that most people don't know anymore, right? For example, how many people even know of two traditional American dances, right? Can anyone know any 20th century traditional dance that came from America, the US? I'll give you one: swing dancing. Most people don't realize that. Tap dancing, right? These are all things that many people don't know. In fact, I find it ironic that if you go to a country like Hungary, they teach swing in their high schools. So more Hungarians percentage know how to do an American dance than Americans, right? And it's sort of a bizarre thought, right? It doesn't mean it's lost. It's being lost, but it can be saved, right? And it's the same sort of thing here. We do have some really great, meaningful experiences that we can have in our colleges. And to me, the idea of, I mean, I taught philosophy for many years before I started going into structural design. The idea of going to a colloquium where you meet people and you share ideas over, Although they would read papers, which was painful. I really preferred it when they presented. They thought I was the crazy one who'd present the paper, right? But that is something that's sort of lost. The whole ivy on the walls, right? That tradition. But it doesn't mean it has to go away. It just means that we have to feel more dedicated to keeping what we think is important, and we might jettison the things that weren't so important. The old boys' school aspect of it can go. I can jettison that out. So, I hope that answered the question. Probably didn't, but I usually end up sharing a little too much about me, and then people, I'm sure someone of these things keeps taking notes about me. And he also does X, right? But I think that's another thing that you can do as an instructor is don't be afraid to share aspects of you, because that's a way of making it personal, right? And that wasn't even necessarily done in colleges, right? I mean, when I was an undergraduate, we would go to these huge lecture halls with 200 plus students, and you would just take notes and then have the multiple choice test grade you, which I felt sort of cheated, right? We paid a lot of money for that, which now it's even more. But you didn't feel that connection, or you can actually build up more of a connection in a Zoom world, right? Where we share a little bit about ourselves just by the strategies we use to get people to share and build a community. Is that about it?
Yeah, I think that was great. Thank you so much,
I'm
Dave.
at my clock over here. I'm like, wow,
Yeah, we're right on
tried
time.
to time it just right. So that's that goes under that, if you go back to one of the slides, that